Metric Formentera album review. Let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from Metric. These guys and gals are a Canadian indie rock band. They've been at it since the early 2000s now. They've been together for a while, and I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, I have not had a very good track record when it comes to enjoying the music of Metric. Their debut album, Old World Underground, Where Are You Now, came out sort of in the middle of the post-punk revival movement. A lot of people rope them in with that time period. And me, at the time, I just didn't get it. I still don't really enjoy the album that much. If anything, I enjoyed their follow-up, the slightly more energetic Live It Out, just a little bit more, but I still wasn't crazy about their sound. I thought that their sound was, I don't know, okay, but so many other bands were doing it a lot more justice. For me, though, I thought Grow Up and Blow Away, at the very least, had a little extra punch to it. At least I saw the appeal of this album. But the low energy of their Fantasies album just got me right back out of the loop with Metric. Also, I should, kind of point out, by the time their Synthetica album rolled around, they were barely a post-punk revival act anymore, and were full-blown synth-pop and alternative dance, which was also one of the first albums that I ever reviewed back when I was doing a written blog on Tumblr. God. And my thoughts on the album haven't really changed either. It's uninspired. Like I said, my track record with Metric over the years has not exactly been good. I will say this though, the darker and bulkier Pagans in Vegas, while not perfect, had some of the best tracks the band had wrote in years. I actually thought it was pretty good overall. And their last album, Art of Doubt, while initially I kind of was not feeling, is better than I initially thought it was. It actually has some pretty solid tracks on it. Even though I wasn't loving these newer releases from Metric, I at least, was able to get through them, see the appeal, and enjoy a handful of tracks. Which leads me to this new album, and this review took me a while, just because, I've been busy, A, and B, this album really caught me off guard. I was not going to review this album, but I heard a lot of rave reviews about the singles leading up to this album, and how different and how good they were, and my morbid curiosity got the best of me, and let me tell you, I might be like 20 years too late, but I actually really love this album. This album starts off with Doomscroller. Who is this band? What am I listening to? This is a beefy synth-pop jam that is oddly progressive, much more than anything else in the genre I've heard this year. I love the whisper quiet vocals, the drama, the pulsating beat as well. This is far from anything that Metric has ever touched. I mean, this so easily could have been bloated and boring and full of itself, especially when you look at the over 10-minute timestamp on this opening track. That, to me, from a distance, sounds like my nightmare, but the surprise here is how great, how raw, how cinematic this track is, and by the end of it, it gets really heavy, too. Not only that, but the final few moments here are absolutely breathtaking. I don't know what inspired this album, I don't know where this came from, but I'm glad it's here. I've loved All Comes Crashing since I first heard it as a single. I love the looming, low-key groove that we get here, as well as, once again, the stellar production and the drama. Out of nowhere, oddly enough, Metric has a ton of depth. And as this track rolls on, picks up the pace, the groovy riff comes in, as well as these awesome vocals, I'm all for it. And what feels like eternity, it was the first single I heard here. It got me excited. It's still a really great single, and probably going to be one of my favorite singles of the year of any genre. It's got the energy and urgency of their early material, but it's got the catchy riff, the great vocals, and the depth that this album brings to the table. The great production, too. It's also just really infectious. What a great single. This album's title track, Formentera, on the other hand, is a completely different animal. This track is a little bit spacier, and it is really stunning and beautiful. The orchestrations on this track are so serene. Like, I can't remember the music of Metric ever being this visual. And like I said, this track is definitely on the softer side of the spectrum. It really creeps on very slowly, but it's done so really gracefully. But it's never boring. It's really heartfelt and emotional. As far as raw emotion goes, I did not know that the band had this in them, and I'm really glad that they do. All that's backed up by some really good production once again, and a surprising turn for the epic, the grandiose. Yeah, better late than never, man. I truthfully don't have a lot of bad things to say about this album. My only real issue comes in the final third of this album. Oh Please, I mean, it's not all bad, this track. I mean, that bulky riff is actually really good. But the unbearably cheesy lyrics and the cliches that we get on this track really get this kind of off track. And because of that, the rest of this song just kind of fall apart. I mean, the production here doesn't hit me as hard. It just becomes a slippery slope that's just really too cheesy for its own good by the end of it. And Paths to the Sky, I think it's the worst track here. This sounds like 7 other tracks here, but those 7 other tracks are done so much better. I mean, there's a cool element or two, but trust me, the unique flavors of the earlier tracks on this album just don't transfer to here. It's flat for me, and that's a shame because the rest of this album's really enjoyable. Enemies of the Ocean is very sweet, very blissful, even a little bouncy. I'm still shocked at the sheer amount of tricks that this album has up its sleeve. I really don't ever know what I'm going to hear from moment to moment, and that's actually really exciting. It's also just really easy to take in. This track just breezes by, makes me feel good. That's not a diss. It's practically got some dream pop and maybe even some shoegaze influences. It's a nice track. I'm really happy with this album. I Will Never Settle's really good too. I mean, once again, the atmosphere here. Some of these backdrops against these songs are really stellar. They really do such a great job of backing up these tracks with these very grandiose and cinematic vibes. Also, it just seems to make Emily Haines' vocals pop that much harder. It's one of the more subtle tracks on this album, but I don't think that's a bad thing. That, alongside of the spacey atmosphere and this really memorable riff when things pick up, makes for another great track. And False Dichotomy, I needed a track like this, I really did. It's very bouncy, fun, bubbly track that takes nods from classic electronic and synth pop. I honestly needed a track like this to pick up the energy overall. But man, how is this album done so right? I mean, like I said, I wasn't going to review this album. I had no interest in a Metric album in 2022. I didn't. I'm sorry, but I didn't. I've not enjoyed so many of their albums, but this ends up being their most progressive, cinematic, well-produced, and well-performed album in a really long time. I know I'm like 20 years too late to the Metric party, but I really haven't enjoyed any of their material as much as I've enjoyed this here. And that might be a hot take, and you may not agree with it, but right now, I'm loving this album, man. I'm feeling a strong 8 on this. But let me know what you guys think down below. If you liked the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.